Since the beginnings of the film industry, one of the most popular sources for a screenplay has been, and still is, printed media. Novels, to be exact. Some films were merely inspired by novels, others have been straight-up adaptations with or without creative license attached to them. In fact, the first movie to be a complete adaptation of a novel was the 1924 psychological drama film Greed, which itself was adapted from the 1899 Frank Norris novel McTeague. The end result was a 9.5-hour movie that was trimmed down to 4 hours at the behest of producers before being chopped down to 2 hours behind the director's back, and because of that the movie was an incoherent mess and was lambasted by critics and cost $700,000 to make and took 2 years to film. And, you know, just to give you guys an idea, adjusted for inflation, this film cost about $11 million in 2023 money and was deemed a flop and just generally shit on. Greed was an important moment in film history as it showed that creating a literal interpretation of a novel was pretty much impossible. No matter what, something had to be left out or condensed in order to make it a movie people actually sit through. Through the decades, there were dozens of movies based on novels that were pretty damn good. Some of the best movies of all time have been based on a novel, but on the opposite end of things, some novels just really don't work out when put on the big screen, be it because of time restrictions, budget limitations, or the fact that some things are just physically impossible to represent outside of the imagination. Last Point has weakened over the years with advances in special effects and computer technology, but there are still things that just don't look right when you put them on the screen. Kinda like Children of the Corn when He Who Walks Behind the Rose is ugh. Of course, as time went on, the concept of an adapted screenplay went outside of novels. Studios would look at comic books, TV shows, cartoons, video games, and even board games for adaptations, and it really depended on how it was done. Some more literal adaptations did in fact work, but stylized or altered adaptations oftentimes can work just as well. Some adaptations merely take the concept of the source material and completely alter it to make it into a movie. That's the wonder of film. If every movie based on a novel was just a shot-for-shot literal adaptation of said novel, you may as well just read the fucking novel. But not every adaptation works on the big screen, and things would have to change or be dropped entirely. This is just my 2 cents on the matter. Like, there's examples of a book that not a lot of people knew about getting a movie made that everybody loved, and then, you know, it just becomes known for that movie. But on the other end of things, there are adaptations of books that are perfectly fine, and, you know, they're good movies, but people just still continue to harp on about the book that it was based on. It's a fucking vicious cycle. I think a prime example of point A is The Shining. The Shining took a lot of creative liberty with the book, and despite this, it is more beloved than the book. Everybody loves the Kubrick Shining movie, it's great. Off the top of my head, the only film adaptation of a book that is held like on the same level as the book that it's based on is the Lord of the Rings movies. People like the books, people like the movies, it's happy times for the fans of Lord of the Rings. Now let's jump forward to the year 2003. Max Brooks, the son of director and producer Mel Brooks, wrote The Zombie Survival Guide, a sort of novelty book describing ways one could survive in a zombie apocalypse. I can't find anything on the numbers it did, but I know a lot of people own this book. This was right around when zombie mania was starting to kick up in the early to mid 2000s, so zombies had become the dominant subgenre of horror. The book is partially a novelty item, but it does have some good tips for general survival, regardless of if they're zombies or not. Following the release of the Zombie Survival Guide, roughly 3 years later, Max Brooks released the more traditional novel World War Z, which was an anthology format book that took place in a world where they had dealt with and survived a zombie pandemic. The virus that causes zombification is called Solanum. I probably mispronounced that. I'm hesitant to refer to the world of World War Z as being a zombie apocalypse because civilization holds on and does kind of bounce back, with hints of it rebuilding over the years. The book was formatted with a reporter character who is basically a fictionalized version of the author that travels the world 10 years after a zombie war, interviewing veterans and politicians and people who survived the war. It depicts every major country's reaction to the zombie pandemic, talks about how the world collapsed, and besides a few instances of funky dialogue, it is a pretty solid book. The pages themselves look like interviews out of a magazine, but that's because the book is formatted through the main character, the reporter, interviewing survivors. Makes this a relatively easy read. My personal favorite sections of World War Z are the sections with US military vet Todd Wayno, the story with the French military guy in the catacombs under Paris, which sounds like something out of a survival horror video game, and the story with Sharon, the feral child, which is an absolutely gutting section when you really think about it. World War Z is a solid book, flawed but solid. It brings forth a lot of good depictions of how people in the government would react, or in some cases not react, to a zombie pandemic. It displays place some of the issues that would arise, such as cannibalism, mass murder, rebellion, mental health issues. It covers all the bases. I think the Quisling bit that they do in the book, which basically citizens suffer mental breakdowns and start completely acting like zombies, is a little far-fetched, but I'll allow it, it's creative. In 2006, when World War Z was released, it was relatively popular, at least among zombie and horror fans, and sadly, Max Brooks didn't write another novel after this. He did a comic, Zombie Survival Guide Recorded Attacks, which I'm guessing exists in the continuity of World War Z. World War Z itself implies that the Solanum virus had been around, it just never really spread until the events of the book. It's a cool comic, it shows all these people through history fighting zombies, and I didn't read it, but it's nothing to really write home about. Once again, I'm not sure how many copies World War Z sold, but it was a popular book, popular enough that Leonardo DiCaprio's production company, Appian Way, and Brad Pitt's production company, Plan B, got into a bidding war over the film rights. Plan B did come out on top, and as a result, we got about a 7-year period of development. Now, when I first heard they were making a movie of World War Z, I was actually quite perplexed with how they were going to pull this off. Was it going to be an anthology? Well, it should have been an anthology because in 2013, World War Z was released, and the term in-name only adaptation gets thrown around a lot. This movie was truly an in-name only adaptation. Hell, before the movie was even released, I was like, oh, this isn't going to be very good, because in Brooks's book, the zombies are Romero-type zombies, the slow shufflers, but in the movie, they were runners, the 28 days later type of zombies. Something which many zombie purists would say doesn't work because zombies stiffen up, but whatever. The movie itself, it's just, I guess, 2 words to describe it, or Hollywood vomit. They got Mark Forster to direct, and as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, the guy who did Quantum of Solace, I'm good. I only saw this in the theater because somebody paid for my ticket, and it was a popcorn movie. A bad one. The kind where it's like, yeah, okay, the movie's shit, but I'm eating popcorn, but then, like, the movie's just so bad that you, like, decide, you know what, and you just, like, regurgitate the popcorn back into the bag and take it back to the concession stand, which, you know, I didn't do. I'll give the movie credit for paying a little bit of a tribute to the book. They show the panic in the city of New York, and that's done pretty well, and then they actually lift the Israel scenario right out of the book with the whole wall around it and everything, but when you take those out, you get this stunted crud fest where it feels like you're having a stroke watching the movie. This movie goes so many places, it's jarring. It has terrible pacing issues. It's like when you want to rub one out and you just like go as fast as you can and you don't even really feel anything, and there's just this like unsatisfactory squirt at the end, and you start to think to yourself, why the fuck did I even bother? That's World War Z, the movie. The book was allowed to go to multiple places because it was an anthology, but following Brad Pitt as he survives like 30 plane crashes was just like a little much for me. Like, maybe if I was stoned when I saw this movie, I would have enjoyed it more, but it jumps around way too much for its own good. It also kind of leaves out one of the major strong points of the novel, the shades of gray with the government and the people, and like how the government is sometimes completely incompetent and causes a lot of death. The best part of the book wasn't really the zombies, it was the world that it created and the scenarios that the characters and the world was put in. And the movie just really misses that by just making the zombies, they're the bad guy, when most of the best zombie stories ever made, zombies are just a backdrop and the real antagonist is the world itself. This is credit that I can even give to The Walking Dead, a show that I really don't like. At the time of release, World War Z was a very well-liked and well-reviewed movie, and a lot of people paid to see it. It made like $500 million. I think everyone was so captivated by it because it was just packed with so much excitement and spectacle. I think people got stupid with the movie. They gushed over it for a little bit, and then it just kind of fell off and nobody ever talked about it again. But despite this, World War Z is still the most profitable zombie movie ever made. When I think of World War Z, I think of a defining moment in Hollywood cash grab history. It managed to creep in just as the zombie fad was on its way out, grab a bunch of money, and then piss off. For all the negativity I have towards this movie, I can admit there are some pretty cool moments, but at the end of the day, it's just 28 days later if it jammed a syringe full of steroids up its ass. I liked the transformation scene, those were really cool, and if you can get over the CGI vomit, the action in the movie is pretty solid. But when you actually think about the plot, just putting aside the fact that this is a poor adaptation, you start asking yourself these questions, like, oh, why is Brad Pitt on a solo mission where he has literal plot invincibility to the point of surviving multiple plane crashes? To answer that question, I have no idea. I hate this movie. Oh, why are the zombies? Why won't they go after people with terminal diseases? I don't know, zombies are dead. Why does it matter? It's stupid. Or maybe they're not dead, they just ripped off 28 Days Later again. They're not zombies, they're infected. The amount of people who have gotten rich off of Danny Boyle is pretty disgusting. Well, it's like 2 people, the Walking Dead guy for stealing stealing his framing device, and whoever wrote this piece of garbage. This movie had a head of steam coming out and had initially been envisioned as a Jason Bourne-style zombie trilogy. While they were hesitant to greenlight a sequel initially, upon seeing the film's success, they went to work on World War Z 2, and yeah, that didn't happen. But what did happen was a long period of development hell. The studios went through several directors and writers before David Fincher was almost locked down to direct, but he chose to do Mindhunter over that, and that was the right choice. The project floated around up until about 2019, right before photography was supposed to begin. The movie was cancelled. There are many contributing factors for this cancellation, but I think the common blame lands on China's decision to ban films featuring ghosts or zombies. Because yeah, sure, let's just not even make it subtle that the art of cinema is dead and that every decision in Hollywood just comes down to money. I'd like to say they need to make a bunch of money so they can keep making films so that they can make more money, but it's probably more like this.
So I can earn more, so I can do more coke.
I must say, it's a rather merciful fate for a movie that it just came out, made a splash, some money, and then sunk to the bottom of memories to just never really be heard from again. There was a game adaptation like 6 years later. I really don't think anybody played it. Now the rights are just sitting and festering like a rotting corpse, hopefully long enough that the rights revert back to Max Brooks and he can try something else with it. I don't hate the movie because it's not a literal adaptation of the book. I hate the movie because they could have done way better with the concept. They just wanted a title, and that is a worse crime than anything. Max Brooks himself has said that he didn't hate the film. I remember seeing an interview with him. I don't know where it went, I can't find it, but when asked how great a moment it must have been to see his movie come to life on the big screen, he was quick to say that no moment would be greater than when his book was published. I'm paraphrasing that a little bit, but that's the gist of it. I get it, he's not gonna dump on the movie. He made bank off of it. It brought more attention to his book and him as a creator, so whatever. I won't trash on him for not hating it. He was honest that it was a poor adaptation of his book, and that's really all that needed to be heard. With all that being said, the zombie craze has been ran into the ground several times over. I thought the Walking Dead ending would have finally put it to rest. I say we let it cool off for a few years, and let's get a new TV series based on World War Z the novel. Anthology format. He can even write some new material for it to supplement the stories from the book. He can be like a host, throw it on cable, get some different directors on it, and presto, we have a show that can easily go for 2 to 3 seasons. Max, if you see this video somehow, hit me up. Let's work together. I'm poor, I need this. In conclusion, I don't think World War Z is the worst movie. I don't like it. It's not like a good movie, but it's guilty more so of being a bad adaptation. A crime that is also its punishment because the title World War Z is still synonymous with the books. I started this video expecting to just ream it like I did with Halloween Kills, and while I'm still strongly against the existence of this movie even after 10 years, my god, this movie's 10 years old. Jesus Christ, I've wasted my life. 10 years is a long enough time period where I can kind of just let go of my hatred. It's gone and forgotten. This video is actually entirely pointless. All I can say is if you like zombies and you haven't read the World War Z book, go out and buy a copy of the book. It's not expensive and it's actually a pretty easy read. And while it's similar to the Romero zombie stories and The Walking Dead in some ways, it does provide a unique take on a zombie pandemic. So that was my 10-year anniversary video. Oh god, 10-year anniversary video. My 10-year anniversary video for World War Z. Bad adaptation, forgettable and lame movie. If you like my content, feel free to like and subscribe. I do all sorts of different things. There's no real theme with my channel. I just kind of do what I want. And you can also be sure to check out my Twitch. I do inconsistent live streams of games based on movies and TV shows or games that are just cinematic in nature. Until then, god, 10 years, are you kidding me?